The birth of Yitschaq, from the book of Yasher, chapter 21. And it was at that time, at the end of the year, and 4 months of Abraham's dwelling in the land of the Bereshiyt in Gerar, that Elohim visited Sarah, and Yahweh remembered her, and she conceived and bore a son to Abraham. And Abraham called the name of the son which was born to him, which Sarah bore to him, Yitschaq. And Abraham circumcised his son Yitschaq at 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded Abraham to do unto his seed after him. And Abraham was 100, and Sarah 90 years old, when Yitschaq was born there. And the child grew up and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast upon the day that Yitschaq was weaned. And Shem and Eber, and all the great people of the land, and Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and his servants, and Pekol, and the captain of his hosts, came to eat and drink upon and rejoice in the feast which Abraham made upon the day his son Yitschaq being weaned. Also Terach, the son of Abraham, and Nahor his brother, came from Haran, they and all belonging to them, for they greatly rejoiced on hearing that a son had been born to Sarah. And they came to Abraham, and they ate and drank, and at the feast which Abraham made upon the day of Yitzchak's being weaned. And Terach and Nahor rejoiced with Abraham, and they remained with him many days in the land of the Philistines. At that time Serug, the son of Reuel, died, in the 1st year of the birth of Yitschaq, son of Abraham. And all the days of Serug were 239 years, and he died. And Ishmael, son of Abraham, was grown up in those days. He was 14 years old when Sarah bore Yitschaq to Abraham. And Elohim was with Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and he grew up, and he learned to use the bow and become an archer. And Yitschaq was 5 years old. He was sitting with Ishmael at the door of the tent. And Ishmael came to Yitschaq and seated himself opposite to him. And he took the bow and drew it and put the arrow in it and intended to slay Yitschaq. And Sarah saw the act which Ishmael desired to do to her son Yitschaq, and it grieved her exceedingly on account of her son. And she sent for Abraham and said to him, Cast out your bondswoman and her son, for your son shall not be the heir with my son. For thus did he seek to do unto him this day. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarah, and rose up in the morning, and took 12 loaves, and a bottle of water, which he gave Hagar, and sent her with her son. And Hagar went into the wilderness, and they dwelt in the wilderness of Paran with the inhabitants of the wilderness. And Ishmael was an archer, and he dwelt in the wilderness a long time. We're going to stop it there. We already looked into Genesis with Bereshiyt with all of these accounts, and now we're going to look at the book of Yovheliym on the birth of Yitschaq. Okay, now we're going to look at the book of Jubilees, Yovheliym, and we're going to go to chapter 16, and this is going to give the promise of Abraham about his son, and then we'll go into the birth of Yitschaq. So Yovheliym chapter 16, and on the new moon of the 4th month we appeared unto Abraham. This is the angels at Mamre, at the oak of Mamre, and we talked with him. And we announced to him that a son would be given to him by Sarah his woman. And Sarah laughed, for she heard that we had spoken these words with Abraham. And we admonished her, and she became afraid, and denied that she had laughed on account of the words. And we told her the name of her son, as his name is ordained and written in the Shamayim, the heavenly tablets, that is Yitschaq. And that when we returned to her at a set time, she would have conceived a son. And in this month Yahweh executed his judgments on Sodom and Gomorrah, and Ziviolim, and the regions of the Jordan, and he burned them with fire and brimstone. Now, we are going to skip through the details of that, and we are going to go to verse 11, chapter 16 of Yovheliym. And this gives us some dates. And in the middle of the 5th month, we moved from thence and dwelt at the well of the oath. So that would be a Shabbat, Seban. And in the middle of the 6th month, Yahweh visited Sarah, and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. And she bore a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at that time of which Yahweh had spoken to Abraham, on the feast of the first fruits of the harvest. Yitschaq was born, and Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant which is ordained forever. And in the 6th year of the 4th week, we came to Abraham to the well of the oath, and we appeared unto him as we had told Sarah that we should return to her, and she would have conceived a son. And we returned in the 7th month, and found Sarah with child before us, and we blessed him, Baruch, and we announced to him all the things which had been decreed concerning him, that he should not die till he should beget 6 sons more, and should see them before he died, but that in Yitschaq should his name and seed be called, and that all the seed of his sons should be the other people, and be reckoned with the other people. But from the seed of Yitschaq, one should become a Kodesh seed, and should not be reckoned among the other people, for he should become the portion of El Elyon, and all his seed had fallen into the possession of Elohim, and it should be unto Yahweh a people for his possession above all nations, that it should become a kingdom, Malkut, of Kohanim priests, and a Kodesh, holy nation. And we went our way, and we announced to Sarah all that we had told him, that they both rejoiced an exceeding great joy, Simcha. And he built there an altar to Yahweh, who had delivered him, and who was making him rejoice, Simcha, in the land of his sojourning. And he celebrated a feast of joy in this month 7 days near the altar which he had built at the well of the oath. And he built a Sukkot for himself and for his servants on that feast. And he was of the first to celebrate the feast of Sukkot on the earth. And during these 7 days he brought each day to the altar a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 oxen, 2 rams, 7 sheep, 1 he-goat for a sin offering, and he might atone thereby for himself and for his seed, and as a thank offering 7 rams, 7 kids, 7 sheep, 7 goats, and their first offerings, and their drink offerings, and he burnt all the fat thereof on the altar, a chosen offering to Yahweh for a sweet smelling savor. And the morning and evening he burnt fragrant substance, frankincense with galbanum, and stacte, and nard, and myrrh, and spice, and costum, and all 7 he offered crushed mixed together in equal parts. And he celebrated the feast during 7 days, rejoicing with all his heart and with all his soul, he and all that were in his house. And there was no stranger with him, but any that was uncircumcised. And he blessed his Creator, who had created him in his generation, for he created him according to the good pleasure, and he knew and perceived that from him would arise the plant of righteousness, the Netzer Zadok, for the eternal generations, and from him a Kodesh seed, so that it would become like him who had made all things. And he blessed and rejoiced, and he called the name of the feast of Yahweh, a joy acceptable to El Elyon, and we blessed him forever, Le'olam Va'ed, and all his seed after him throughout all generations of the earth, because he celebrated this feast in its season, according to the testimony of these heavenly tablets, the book of Yovheliym. We're going to skip there, and then we are going to finish out. Now let's just keep reading. Why not? Verse 29 in 16 of Yovheliym. For this reason it is ordained on the heavenly tablets concerning Yisrael, that they celebrate the feast of Sukkot 7 days with joy on the 7th month, according to acceptable before Yahweh, a statute forever throughout their generations every year. And to this there is no limit of days. For it is ordained forever regarding Yisrael that they should celebrate it and dwell in Sukkot, and set wreaths upon their heads, and make leafy boughs and willows from the brook. And Abraham took branches of palm trees and the fruit of goodly trees, and every day going round the altar with the branches 7 times a day in the morning, he praised and gave thanks to Elohim for all things in joy. That's all important. Now we're to 17. Now it gets interesting. Chapter 17 of Yovheliym. And in the 1st year of the 1st week of Yitschaq was weaned in this jubilee. And Abraham made a great banquet in the 3rd month, on the day his son Yitschaq was weaned. And Yishmael, the son of Hagar, the Mitzra'i, was before the face of Abraham his father in his place, and Abraham rejoiced and blessed Elohim because he had seen his sons and had not died childless. And he remembered the words which he had spoken to him on the day on which Lot had parted from him, and he rejoiced because Yahweh had given him seed upon the earth to inherit the earth. And he blessed with all his mouth the Creator of all things. And Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing, and Abraham rejoicing with great joy, and she became jealous of Ishmael, and said to Abraham, Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman will not be heir with my son Yitschaq. And the thing was grievous in Abraham's sight because this of his maidservant, and because of his son, and that he drove them from them. And Elohim said to Abraham, Let it not be grievous in your sight, because of the child and because of the bondservant, in all that Sarah has said unto you, hearken to her words and do them. And this is where we stopped in the book of Yovheliym and as well as Bereshiyt, and we're going to skip forward, so give me just a second. Okay, we are going to skip to Yovheliym 18, and the reason for that is to stay on topic. We're talking about Yitschaq and what happened with that sacrifice. So, this is from the Melachim, the messengers, the watchers' point of view from the book of Yovheliym that was given to Moshe on the mount. Chapter 18, And Elohim said to him, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Behold, Hanani, here am I. And he said, Take your Yachid, whom you love, even Yitschaq, and go unto the high country, and offer him on one of the mountains, which I will point out unto you. And he rose early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 young men with him, and Yitschaq his son, and clave the wood of the burnt offering. And he went to the place on the 3rd day, and saw the place far off. And he came to a well of water, and he said to his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and the lad shall go yonder. And when we have worshipped, we shall come again to you. And he took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it on Yitschaq his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife, and they went both of them together to that place. And Yitschaq said to his father, Father, and he said, Here am I, Hanani, my son, Ben. And he said unto him, Behold the fire and the knife and the wood, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering, Father? ? And he said, Elohim will provide himself a sheep for a burnt offering, my son. And he drew near to the place at the mount of Elohim, and he built an altar, and he placed the wood on the altar, and bound Yitschaq his son, and placed him on the wood which was upon the altar, and stretched forth his hand to take the knife, and slay Yitschaq his son in obedience. And I stood before him, and before the prince Mastamo. And Yahweh said, Bid him not to lay his hand on the lad, nor to do anything to him, for I have shown that he fears Yahweh. And I called to him from heaven, and said unto him, Abraham, Abraham. And he was terrified, and said, Behold, Hanani, here am I. And I said unto him, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything to him. For now I have shown that you fear Yahweh, and have not withheld your son, your firstborn son, from me. And the prince Mastamo was put to shame. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and beheld a ram caught by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the place, Yahweh has seen. So that it is said, Yahweh has seen. That is Mount Zion. And Yahweh called Abraham by his name a second time from the Shamayim, from heavens, and caused as to appear to speak to him in the name of Yahweh. And he said, By myself I have sworn, says Yahweh, because you have done these things, and have not withheld your son, your Yachid, from me, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seeds, as the stars of the heaven and the sands which is on the seashore. And your seed shall inherit the cities of its enemies, and in your seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice, and I have shown to all that you are a faithful unto me in all that I have said unto you. Go in shalom. And Abraham went to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt by the oath, the well of the oath, and he celebrated this feast every year 7 days with joy, and he called the feast of Yahweh according to the 7 days during which he went and returned in shalom, peace. And accordingly it has been ordained and written in the heavenly tablets regarding Israel and his seed, that they should observe the feast 7 days with the joy of feast. And then it goes into chapter 19, and in the first year of the first week of the 42nd Jubilee, Abraham returned and dwelt opposite Hebron in Kiryat Arabah. So he's returning 2 weeks of years, and in the first year of the third week of this Jubilee, the days of the life of Sarah were accomplished, and she died in Hebron. And Abraham went and mourned over her and buried her, and we tried to see if his ruach were patient, and he were not indigent in the words of his mouth. And he found patient in this, and was not disturbed. Now we go into that because when we look at the book of Yasher, it has a much more details to the whole story. Now we're going to go back to chapter 22 in the book of Yasher, and we're going to skip up to verse 39 of Yasher. That is 22:39. And this gets us back to the birth of Yitschaq from the book of Yasher. This is all being read from the Et Sefer. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Pigeon. We love you and love the translations and going back between our different versions with the Kodesh names. We thank you. And so, verse 39 of chapter 22. And they also built a city there, and they called the name thereof Aram, after the name of their eldest brother. that is Aram Tzova, to this day. So then, verse 40, and Yitschaq, the son of Abraham, was growing up in these days, and Abraham, his father, taught him the ways of Yahweh, to know Yahweh, and Yahweh was with him. That's a super important statement. Now, the reason that we are going back to this point is a challenge that was made and accepted. So this is something that is not expressed in the other books in this detail. Chapter 22, verse 41 of Yasher, and when Yitschaq was 37 years old, Yishmael, his brother, was going about with him in his tent, and Yishmael boasted to himself to Yitschaq, saying, I was 13 years old when Yahweh spoke to my father to circumcise us, and I did according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to my father. And I gave my soul unto Yahweh, and I did not transgress his word which he commanded my father. And Yitschaq answered Yishmael, saying, Why do you boast to me about this? About a little bit of your flesh which you did take from your body, concerning which Yahweh commanded you. As Yahweh lives, the Elohim of my father Abraham, important part here, if Yahweh should say unto my father, Take now your son, and bring him to an offering before me, I would not refrain, but I would joyfully accede to it. And Yahweh heard the words that Yitschaq spoke to Yishmael, and it seemed good in the sight of Yahweh, and he thought to try Abraham in this matter. And the day arrived when the sons of Elohim came and placed themselves before Yahweh, B'nai Elohim, and Satan also came with the sons of Elohim before Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto Satan, by the way, in the book of Yasher, he's mentioned as Mastamo. And this is more detail from the human point of view, where the book of Yasher is from the heavenly watchers' point of views. Read chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Yovheliym. So, Satan asks, and Yahweh said unto Satan, Whence come you? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And Yahweh said to Satan, What is your word to me concerning all the children of the earth? And Satan answered Yahweh and said, I have seen all the children of the earth who serve you and remember you when they require anything from you. And when you give them the thing which they require from you, they sit at their ease and forsake you, and they remember you no more. Have you seen Abraham, the son of Terach, who at first had no children, and he served you and erected altars to you wherever he came, and he brought up offerings upon them and proclaimed your name continually to all the children of the earth. And now that his son Yitschaq is born to him, he has forsaken you. He has made a great feast for all the inhabitants of the land. And Yahweh he has forgotten. And for amidst all that he has done, he brought you no offering, neither burnt offering, nor peace offering, neither ox, nor lamb, nor goat, of all that he killed on the day which his son was weaned. even from that time his son's birth till now, being 37 years old, he built no altar before you, nor brought any offering to you. For he saw that you did give what he requested before you, and he therefore forsook you. And Yahweh said to Satan, have you thus considered my servant Abraham? For there is none like him upon the earth, a perfect and upright Yashar man, before me, one that fears Elohim and avoids evil, as I live, where I to say unto him, bring up Yitschaq your son before me. He would not withhold him from me, much more if I told him to bring up a burnt offering before me from the flock of his herds. And Satan answered Yahweh and said, speak now, then now unto Abraham as you have said, and you will see whether he will not this day transgress and cast aside your words. And then it goes into chapter 23. At that time, the word of Yahweh came to Abraham, chapter 23 of Yasher, and he said unto Abraham, and he said, here am I, Hineni. And he said to him, take now your son, your Yakid, whom you love, even Yitschaq, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon the mountains which shall be shown to you, for there will you see a cloud and the glory of Yahweh. And Abraham said within himself, how shall I separate my son Yitschaq from Sarah his mother, in order to bring him up for a burnt offering before Yahweh? And Abraham came into the tent, and he sat before Sarah his woman, and he spoke these words to her, my son Yitschaq is grown up, and he has not for some time studied the service of his Elohim. Now tomorrow I will go and bring him to Shem and Eber his son, and there he will learn the ways of Yahweh, for they will teach him to know Yahweh, as well as to know that when he prays continually before Yahweh, he will answer him. Therefore, there he will know the way of serving Yahweh Elohim. And Sarah said, you have spoken well. Go, my Adon, my Lord, and do unto him as you have said. But remove him not at a great distance from me, neither let him remain there too long, for my soul is bound within his soul. And Abraham said to Sarah, my daughter, let us pray to Elohim, that he may do good with us. And Sarah took her son Yitschaq, and he abode all that night with her, and she kissed and embraced him, and gave him instructions till morning. And she said to him, O my son, how can my soul separate itself from you? And she still kissed him and embraced him, and she gave Abraham instructions concerning him. And Sarah said to Abraham, O my Lord, and I pray you take heed of your son, and place your eyes over him, for I have no other son nor daughter but him. O forsake him not. If he be hungry, give him bread. If he be thirsty, give him water to drink. Do not let him go on foot, neither let him sit in the sun. It's a mother. Neither let him go by himself in the road. neither force him from whatsoever he may desire, but do unto him as he may say to you. And Sarah wept bitterly the whole night on account of Yitschaq, and she gave him instructions till morning. And in the morning Sarah selected a very fine and beautiful garment from those garments which she had in the house, that Abimelech had given to her, and she dressed Yitschaq, her son, therewith, and she put on a turban on his head, and she enclosed a precious stone in the top of the turban. And she gave them provisions for the road, and they went back. They went forth, and Yitschaq went with his father Abraham, and some of the servants accompanied them to see them off the road. And Sarah went out with them, and she accompanied them upon the road to see them off. And they said to her, Return to the tent. And when Sarah heard the words of her son Yitschaq, she wept bitterly. And Abraham, her man, wept with her, and their son wept with them a great weeping. Also those who went with them wept greatly. And Sarah caught hold of her son Yitschaq, and she held him in her arms, and she embraced him, and continued to weep with him. And Sarah said, Who knows if after this day I shall ever see you again? And they still wept together, Abraham, Sarah, and Yitschaq, and all those that accompanied them on the road, wept with them. And Sarah afterward turned away from her son, weeping bitterly. And all her manservants and maidservants returned with her to the tent. And Abraham went with Yitschaq his son to bring him up as an offering before YHWH, as he had commanded him. And Abraham took 2 of his young men with him, Ishmael the son of Hagar, and Eleazar his servant. And they went together with them, and while they were walking in the road, the young men spoke these words to themselves. And Ishmael said to Eleazar, Now my father Abraham is going with Yitschaq to bring him up for a burnt offering to YHWH, and as he commanded him. Now when he returns, he will give unto me all that he possesses to inherit after him, for I am his firstborn. And Eleazar answered Ishmael and said, Surely Abraham did cast you away with your mother, and swear that you should not inherit anything of all he possesses. And to whom will he give all that he has with all his treasures, but unto me his servant, who has been faithful in his house, who has served him night and day, and has done all that he desired me. To me will he bequeath at his death all that he possesses. And while Abraham was proceeding with his son Yitschaq along the road, Satan came and appeared to Abraham in the figure of a very aged man, humble and of a contrite ruach, and approached Abraham and said to him, Are you silly or brutish that you go to do this thing this day to your Yachid? For Elohim gave you a son in your latter days, in your old age, and will you go and slaughter him this day because he committed no violence? And will you cause the soul of your Yachid to perish from the earth? Do you not know and understand that this thing cannot be of YHWH? For YHWH cannot do unto man such evil upon earth, to say to him, Go slaughter your child. And Abraham heard this, and knew that it was the word of Satan, who endeavored to draw him aside from the way, the Vederek of YHWH. But Abraham would not hearken to the voice of Satan, and Abraham rebuked him, so that he went away, and Satan returned and came to Yitschaq. And he appeared to Yitschaq in the figure of a young man, comely and well-favored, and he approached Yitschaq and said to him, Do you not know and understand that your silly old father brings you to slaughter this day for nothingness, for naught? Now, therefore, my son, do not listen nor attend to him, for he is a silly old man. And let not your precious soul be beautiful, and beautiful figure be lost from the earth. And Yitschaq heard this, and said unto Abraham, Have you heard, my father, that which this man has spoken? Even thus he has spoken. And Abraham answered his son Yitschaq, and said to him, Take heed of him, and do not listen to his words, nor attend to him, for he is Satan, endeavoring to draw us aside this day from the commandments of Elohim. And Abraham rebuked Satan, and Satan went from them, and seeing he could not prevail over them, he hid himself from them. And then he went and passed before them in the road, and he transformed himself to a large brook of water in the road, Kidron Valley. And Abraham and Yitschaq and his 2 young men reached that place, and they saw a large brook, and powerful as a mighty waters. And they entered the brook and passed through it. And the waters at first reached their legs, and they went deeper into the brook, and the waters reached up to their necks. And they were terrified, all of them, on account of the water. And while they were going over the brook, Abraham recognized the place, and he knew that there was no water there before. Umang, yes, it's dinner time. Pardon the dog. And Abraham said to his son Yitschaq, I know this place in which there is no brook nor water. Now, therefore, it is this Satan who does all this to us, to draw us aside from this day from the commands of Elohim. And Abraham rebuked him, and said unto him, YHWH rebuke you. O Satan, begone from us, for we go by the commands, the mitzvot of Elohim. And Satan was terrified at the voice of Abraham, and he went away from them. The place again became dry as it was at first, and Abraham went with Yitschaq towards the place Elohim had told him. And on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place at a distance where Elohim had told him of. And a pillar of fire appeared to him that reached from the earth to the heaven, Eretz to Shamayim, and a cloud of kavod, of glory, upon the mountain. And the glory of YHWH was seen in the cloud. And Abraham said to Yitschaq, My son, do you see that mountain, which we perceive at a distance, that which I see upon it? And Yitschaq answered and said unto his father, I see, and lo, a pillar of fire and a cloud, and the glory of Yahweh is seen upon the cloud, and Abraham knew that his son was accepted before Yahweh for a burnt offering. And Abraham said to Eleazar and unto Ishmael his son, Do you also see that which we have seen upon the mountain, which is at a distance? And they answered and said, We see nothing more than like the other mountains on the earth. And Abraham knew that they were not accepted before Yahweh to go with him. And Abraham said to them, Abide ye here with the ass, while I and Yitschaq my son will go to yonder mount and worship there before Yahweh, and then return to you. And Eleazar and Ishmael remained in that place as Abraham had commanded. And Abraham took wood for a burnt offering, and placed it upon his son Yitschaq. And he took the fire and the knife, and they both went to the place. And when they were going along, Yitschaq said to his father, Behold, I see here the fire and wood, and where then is the lamb that is to be the burnt offering before Yahweh? ? And Abraham answered his son Yitschaq, saying, Yahweh has made choice of you, my son, to be a perfect burnt offering instead of the lamb. And Yitschaq said unto his father, I will do all that Yahweh spoke to you with joy and cheerfulness of heart. And Abraham again said unto Yitschaq his son, Is there in your heart any thought or counsel concerning this which is not proper? Tell me, my son, I pray you. O my son, conceal it not from me. And Yitschaq answered his father Abraham and said unto him, O my father, as Yahweh lives, and as my soul lives, there is nothing in my heart to cause me to deviate either to the right or to the left from the word that he has spoken to you. Neither limb nor muscle has moved or stirred at this, nor is there in my heart any thought or evil counsel concerning this. But I am of joyful and cheerful heart in this matter, and I say, Baruch atah Yahweh, blessed is Yahweh, who has this day chosen me to be a burnt offering before him. And Abraham greatly rejoiced at the words of Yitschaq, and they went on and came together to the place where Yahweh had spoken of. And Abraham approached to build the altar in that place, and Abraham was weeping. And Yitschaq took some stones and mortar until they had finished building the altar. And Abraham took the wood and placed it in order upon the altar which he had built. And he took his son Yitschaq and bound him in order to place him upon the wood which was upon the altar, to slay him for a burnt offering before Yahweh. And Yitschaq said to his father, Bind me securely, and then place me on the altar, lest I should turn and move, and break loose from the force of the knife upon my flesh, and thereby profane the burnt offering. And Abraham did so. And Yitschaq still said to his father, O my father, when you shall have slain me and burnt me for an offering, take with you that which shall remain of my ashes, and bring to Sarah my mother, and say to her, This is the sweet-smelling savor of Yitschaq, But do not tell her this if she sits near a well or upon any high place, lest she should cast her soul after me and die. And Abraham heard the words of Yitschaq, and he lifted up his voice and wept with Yitschaq when he spoke these words. And Abraham's tears gushed upon Yitschaq his son, and Yitschaq wept bitterly. And he said to his father, Hasten you, my father, and do with me the will of Yahweh Eloheinu, as he has commanded you. And the hearts of Abraham and Yitschaq rejoiced at this thing which Yahweh had commanded them. But the eye wept bitterly, while the heart rejoiced. And Abraham bound his son Yitschaq and placed him on the altar upon the wood. And Yitschaq stretched forth his neck upon the altar before his father. And Abraham stretched forth his hand to take the knife, to slay his son as a burnt offering before Yahweh. At that time the angels of mercy, Chesed, came before Yahweh and spoke to him concerning Yitschaq, saying, O Yahweh, you are merciful and compassionate King, Melech, over all that you have created in the heavens, the Shamayim, and in the Eretz, the earth, and you support them all. Give therefore ransom and redemption instead of your servant Yitschaq, and pity and have compassion on Abraham and Yitschaq his son, who are this day performing your commands. Have you seen, O Yahweh, how Yitschaq the son of Abraham your servant is bound down to the slaughter like an animal? Now therefore let your pity be roused for them. And Yahweh, at that time Yahweh appeared unto Abraham and called to him from the Shamayim, from heaven, and said unto him, Lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything unto him, for now I know that you fear Elohim in performing this act, and in not withholding your son, your Yachid, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold, and a ram caught in a thicket by its horns, that was the ram which Yahweh Elohim had created in the earth in the day which he made the earth and the heavens. For Yahweh had prepared this ram from that day to be a burnt offering instead of Yitschaq. And this ram was advancing to Abraham when Satan caught hold of him. Remember the thicket. Satan caught hold of him and entangled his horns in the thicket, that he might not advance to Abraham, in order that Abraham might slay his son. And Abraham, seeing the ram advancing to him, and Satan withholding him, fetched him and brought him before the altar. And he loosed his son Yitschaq from his binding, and put the ram in his stead. And Abraham killed the ram upon the altar, and brought it up as an offering in the place of his son Yitschaq. And Abraham sprinkled some of the blood of the ram upon the altar, and he exclaimed and said, This is in the place of my son. And may this be considered this day as the blood of my son before Yahweh. And all that Abraham did on this occasion by the altar, he would exclaim and say, This is the room of my son, and may it this day be considered before Yahweh in the place of my son. And Abraham finished the whole of the service by the altar, and the service was accepted before Yahweh, and was accounted as if it had been Yitschaq. And Yahweh blessed Abraham and his seed on that day. And Satan, this is parts that were missing in the other narratives. This is, we're at Yasher chapter 23, and we're at 76. And I found this very interesting. And Satan went to Sarah, and he appeared to her in the figure of a very old man, humble and meek. And Abraham was not yet engaged in the burnt offering before Yahweh. So this happened before. And he said unto her, Do you know all the work of Abraham has made with your Yachid this day? For he took Yitschaq and built an altar and killed him, and brought him up as a sacrifice upon the altar. This is like the fifth or sixth lie of Satan. And Satan lied and said, Yitschaq cried and wept before his father, but he looked not at him, neither did he have compassion over him. And Satan repeated these words, and he went away from him. And Sarah heard all the words of Satan, and she imagined him to be an old man from amongst the sons of the men whom had been with her son. And he came and told her these things. And Sarah lifted up her voice and wept and cried out bitterly on account of her son. And she threw herself upon the ground and cast dust upon her head. And she said, O my son Yitschaq, my son, oh, that I had died this day instead of you. And she continued and wept and grieved. I'm going to skip forward just a little bit, because we've only got a few more minutes left before an hour. But when the servants came, and it says, but this is in 81, but I console self my words, my son, in this being the word of Yahweh, for you did perform the command of your Elohim, for who can transgress the word of our Elohim, in whose hands is the soul of every living creature. You are just, O Yahweh Elohim, for all your works are good and righteous, and for I also am rejoiced with your word which you did command, and while my eyes wept bitterly, my heart rejoices. So that's Sarah's response to her finding out of what she thought was the death of her son. And Sarah laid her head upon the bosom of one of her handmaids, and she became as still as a stone. She afterwards rose and went about making inquiries till she came to Hebron. And she inquired of all those whom she met walking in the road, and no one could tell her what happened to her son. And she came with her maidservants and manservants to Kiryat Arabah, familiar place, which is Hebron. And she asked concerning her son, and she remained there while she sent some of her servants to seek where Abraham had gone with Yitschaq. And when they went to seek him in the house of Shem and Eber, and they could not find him, and they sought after throughout the land, and he was not there. And behold, Satan came to Sarah in the shape of an old man, and he came and stood before her, and he said unto her, I spoke falsely unto you, for Abraham did not kill his son, and he is not dead. And when she heard the word, her joy was so exceedingly violent on account of her son, that her soul went out through joy, and she died, and was gathered to her people. And when Abraham had finished his service, and returned with his son Yitschaq to his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and they came home. And Abraham sought for Sarah, and they could not find her, and they made inquiries concerning her. And they said unto him, they went as far as Hebron, and you see both that you had gone. And as she was informed, and Abraham and Yitschaq went to her in Hebron, when they found that she was dead, they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly over her. And Yitschaq fell upon his mother's face and wept over her. And he said, O my mother, how have you left me? And where have you gone? ? Oh, how have you left me? And Abraham and Yitschaq wept greatly, and all their servants wept with them on account of Sarah, and they mourned over her great and heavy mourning. And we will continue at another time on the buying of the double cave of Pelah, and in the field of Ephron. And this gives so much more detail, putting all three books, Bereshiyt, Genesis, and the book of Yovheliym, which was given to Moshe on the mount by the watchers, written down in the heavenly tablets. And then the book of Yasher, which is a Torah of complete historical value. And as we compare them, so interesting, because they're three different points of view on the three different events. Shalom Aleichem. This is Mr. Vance of YHWHY. If you've enjoyed this presentation, please subscribe, link, and send this out on your different posts. Share these, because we think this is very important information that needs to get out to the nations. We are to have the faith of Abraham, and when we look at his son Yitschaq and that sacrificing, we know that ram that it says took Yitzchak's place that was made from the beginning, we know that to be the deliverance of Yahweh. Shalom.